Alrighty, we're cooking on gas. Okay, so look, obviously we've got JP and we've got CaaS, and I'm expecting a few more people to be joining. But who is JP and who is CaaS, and effectively who did he work for? So JP and CaaS are part of a project who is the co-owner, I think, or at least I know JP is the owner of a company called Analysis on Chain. Analysis on Chain is an organisation that provides research, analysis, and investigation to clients and communities. Analysis on Chain is providing objective analysis on projects of MDB's choosing, enabling you to better weigh up and assess the risks in line with your personal tolerances. Obviously, none of the information provided is financial advice and is purely educational. And what we're going to do, so just for clarity, each month we're going to be running a community vote, so purely for Millionaire Club members to vote on the two projects that they want to have kind of explored as a deep dive session. And what we'll do is, I think that we confirm that it'll be a monthly session. So that the actual deep dive will be the last Sunday of every month, somewhere between 8, 9 or 10 p.m. UK time or UTC. We'll always determine that beforehand. And the voting of the projects will be the preceding 2 weeks or 3 weeks actually. So basically, the beginning of each month, we'll put the voting documents out, and each it'll be a forms. You fill in the form, kind of a week beforehand. We'll tally up the two top projects, and then we'll hand them off to JP and the team, and that'll give them a week to do their research basically. So just wanted to give you a quick oversight. JP, for anyone who doesn't know you, and then CaaS, if you don't mind just basically giving yourselves a short introduction, and then you guys can take the stage and do what you need to do.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having us. It's much appreciated, and it's great to see you all here. I guess for myself, my name's Jason Pearson. I'm doxed. You can just head to the Discord, go on the website, see who I am. I actually have a background in engineering. I actually work in supply chains right now, but crypto and blockchain technology is the future, and I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I've been doing research and analysis for about a year right now, and publishing that in my Discord. I don't know if any of you has been in there, but we've got a slightly different format now, and so AOC is our organisation, right? We're a business here in the UK. We do a number of things, do the research and analysis like we're going to present to you today. We're also working with organisations like Obsidian for any rug pull investigations or all of that sort of stuff. So it brings me great pleasure today to come and speak to you all about two projects, Horde and Nillion. I think what we've got to say is, I don't know if we've got any particular maxes of either of them in here or anything like that, but what we say is what we found. We tried to keep opinions out of it, although in some cases, it's hard to keep emotions out of it. But I think in this case, I think we've done a pretty good job, and I'm pleased to see the researchers come together. So just one final thing, and I'll hand over to CaaS. The research that we've done is, for each project, is a 14-page document that we've released to our community members. We have a paid membership. They get to see this information as well, but it's 14 pages for each of the particular documents, and that takes hours and hours to put together. Multiple resources as well. So I think the purpose for me for this session is not to promote a project or to say that it's going to rug or anything like that. That's not up to us. All we're going to present is what we find, and then it's up to you to make any decisions that you're going to make, right? So we'll try and keep it like that. CaaS, over to you, if you'd like to give yourself a quick intro.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Carl, or CaaS, whichever you want to call me. CaaS is Crypto as a Service. My background is in IT, been in IT for working as a test consultant for about 6 to 7 years, and it's primarily about understanding a process, break it down to its granular level, and then I'm trying to negotiate time to get it tested. But predominantly my passion, which I've gone from a hobby into pretty much like a part-time job now, is looking into projects I started off pretty much as just buying coins for not really knowing what I'm doing, all the way to learning from my mistakes and becoming better at it, learning about skills about navigating through the blockchain. And I then started writing some threads. I saw like a bit of a gap on Twitter where I just kind of felt there was just too many shills in the space. So I wanted to sort of look at a more sort of neutral and balanced view. I started doing that, and then I joined at the time it's JP Crypto Assets Discord, now Analysis on Chain, where I met some fellow sort of like-minded individuals. And from there, I've just been integrating more of sort of risk analysis and more sort of objective research into projects. That's how I met JP, and it's one part of Analysis on Chain.
Fantastic. Really good intro, gents, and really appreciate it. So just as a couple of points just to make clear that the project selected, or what go out for the vote, can be a project that hasn't quite kicked off yet, is kind of in its funding phase. It can be a project that's well established. Be any project you like, and I think I'm not familiar with Nillion, I have to be honest. Obviously, I'm familiar with Horde, at least from an outside view, which is currently a project that's been around for seems to be some time. I don't know whether Nillion's a new project or what, but obviously you guys can state that as you kind of going through your research piece. And secondly, I just want to say the reason we're in the Millionaire VC rather than just typically on the stage is for two reasons, as you guys know. Number one, it's a Millionaire Club only perk. And number two, I'm presuming the guys are going to be streaming some sort of report or going through some analysis in kind of a stream session. So this is why we're in this channel to be selected. So that's just a quick point from me, and back over to yourself, gents.
Cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, so these projects, so when you gave me the name, Horde I'm very familiar with. Nillion I was not, but it's fair to say I'm pretty excited about Nillion for sure. We'll get into some of the concepts. Now, the concepts for Nillion are pretty... well, it's blown CaaS's mind, let's put it that way. So, but I'm looking at Nillion as like, okay, this is going to disrupt a few things, I think. And you'll hear more as we get into it. So, for sure. We'll come on to Nillion second. First thing we'll do is jump into Horde. So the first thing I'm going to do is just share my screen. I'll show you the report. So if any of you guys want to have a copy of this report, normally we do charge for this because there's hours worth of work that goes into this, but you guys get it for free. Okay, so let me just share my screen. And yeah,
just while you're doing that, JP, can I just ask you a quick question? If the guys want to jump in and ask a question at any point, do you have any problem with that, or would you prefer to get through the documentation first and have QA at the end? How do you feel about that?
I'm easy,
we could probably stop us.
So you're happy to just jump in and ask questions at any point, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. The thing I would say is that we've got a bit of a hard stop later on because I've got another event to go to. So we just need to be mindful of time, which is okay. But at 10 o'clock UK time, which is an hour and 20 minutes away, we need to hop off. So we'll go with you guys. If you guys want to ask more questions or you want to get through this, then I'm fine either way. We'll work around you. Okay, so you should be able to see now on the stage a watch stream screen, right? So if you click on that, you'll be able to see the report. Okay, you can see here it's 14 pages long. We've looked into all sorts of different bits and bobs, so it's pretty in depth. And you guys get a copy of this after anyway, if you want it. Reach out to me and we'll happily give you a copy. Now. It starts off just with an executive summary. I'd start off with just by asking a few of you guys who's in Horde right now. They've just put in chat. Let us know who's in Horde. What do you think to the team? How have you got on with the team? Do you think they're they're doing all the right things? Where's your mind at if you're invested in Horde? Just for clarity, I'm not invested in Horde. Are you invested, CaaS?
not, no.
Okay.
It's too high for my risk.
Okay. Cool. Well, you can use the voice chat. Up in the top right, there's a little speech sort of icon. You can click that and type any question in there, so feel free to do that. Let me pull up the screen. There we go. Right, so first thing, Horde, okay? We'll go through... It's got a bit of a ecosystem to it, okay? Obviously, it's got the LMS. We all know about the LMS. And it's done a really good job at keeping the price stable for a number of months, which, if you'd have asked me if that was possible going into a bear market, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, I'd have said, I doubt it. But, you know, these guys have proven it so far, and I think there's a big caveat to that later, which we'll get into. CaaS, would you like to give us an overview of the ecosystem itself and just what other bits and bobs they've got going on with the protocol?
Yeah, I think the liquidity management system is it's been well publicised. It's very popular, and we've already seen some forks from, I think, Starlink satellite. The Rebellion, I'm pretty sure Red Light are using an element of it as well. So the LMS is obviously designed to keep a stable price, attractive price. As you can tell from Deck Screener, it's been roughly between 98 and $104 plus since inception. And it's been very well publicised by a lot of popular influencers all over Twitter as well. The project also has a treasury which we've got links for on Nansen as well, which you've checked out. The project also has a trading bot which is used to help with the general ecosystem in LMS, and is been expanded out to its users to be essentially like a separate entity within its ecosystem. I believe that started at what was on Halloween, I think, is when the trading bot started its work for as part of the Z NFTs, which we'll go into a bit more detail later. Horde also working, I believe, on a Dex and a tower defense style game. I'm a big fan of tower defense style games, to be honest, but I'm a massive fan of that. And they, as far as I know as well, that they have also, I think they've rented out their LMS to other projects as well to generate more revenue and income for the project.
I think Gold Society was one of the spin-offs as well.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah,
actually, Golden Society paid, I think it was about 50k for the license of the LMS. So the LMS, which we'll get into later, the LMS is a smart contract, but that smart contract's not verified, which means it's closed source. So you don't know what's in there necessarily, and then that means they can sell that off as a package. And we know that that's been used on a couple of different occasions. Golden Society have since completely pivoted, moving away from anything on that front. But the other projects you mentioned earlier, CaaS, like Starlink, yeah, Starlink satellite, they didn't fork it, they created their own, right? And there's been a number of different projects. I think even Rebellion have created their own as well. So it's not necessarily a fork, it's their iteration of the LMS, let's say. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, that's cool. As well as that, from the trading bot, they also dedicate part of the income from that to charity as well. I did remember, I think I read or heard from I heard from an AMA. They did have to convince one of the charities to take the payment because, so people outside of Web3 are still a little bit uneasy and funny about crypto, but they have been successful in doing that recently, from what I can understand. That's pretty much the high level executive summary of their ecosystem, which we'll dive into a bit more as we go further down. So project and token details. This is normally a lot more in-depth and populated, but when the team ran on, it's a little bit difficult to find information. All I know is we've got founder names: Will, Dryden, Tommy Gunn, and Alex. We've not been able to verify. And by verify, what we do is we would go all the way to things like LinkedIn. A report we ran literally just before this AMA. I had like a UK government document which showed like the history of the company's turnover for the last 3 years. So that's normally the level of detail that we go into. But as a team ran on, and I can't get their proper names and stuff, it's impossible for us to verify their history.
And
source of
just
funding.
to add to that,
sorry. Yeah.
Normally, I mean, Apex has seen this before. Maybe one or two of others have as well. We normally do things like reverse image searching. We really go deep on them. One thing I'd say in terms of founders, we've looked through multisigs, which we'll get into in a bit anyway. We've looked at the wallets on the multisigs, right? What we can say is that I think 3 out of 4 of them, is it 3 out of 4, use Tornado Cash in and out, which either is a good or bad thing. It's not for me to say, it just is. And then one of them we have found has used Binance. So I guess, you could find out in the right circumstances who that person is. The problem is I don't think Binance would do anything because it wasn't a direct wallet that's involved. So they've had a wallet that's fed a wallet that's fed a wallet, then Binance, right? So that bit's a bit of a grey area, but for all intents and purposes, I would say they've done a pretty damn good job at staying anonymous. But I think just to caveat that, from what I've seen and what I've heard about the communities, the team have done a pretty good job in terms of communicating with the community, obviously developing, bringing new products out, things like that. So our job is not to put the team down in any way. We're just saying what we've got here, what we can find. Sorry, Cass.
That's all right. JB, have you got the Horde Miro board I created? Might be worth showing that just to show how we mapped it out.
No, but whilst you're talking, I can go and get it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, and obviously from the source of funding as well. Sorry, the legal structure. Again, we've not been able to verify any of that as due to anonymity. Source of funding is obviously purchases of plots nodes, i.e. our sales going in and buying, NFT mint sales for the trading bot as a service, and also for the NFT scenes, which will come in handy for essentially stopping the your plots from becoming infected, because from mutating. As you know, they've sort of changed it to all plots are now infected unless it's an Uber plot. But again, we'll talk into that later on. And yeah, perfect timing, JP. So, is that right? Yeah, that is. We use a tool called Miro, which is essentially like I suppose like a project planning, like a mind map sort of board. So what I've done is I've mapped out the multi-sigs in orange. So I took that from Genosis Safe, and you can find the details of the multi-sig in their Discord as well. I've taken the wallets. I've just literally gone through all the transactions that didn't have a contract next to it, and just tried to basically follow the money and just see what sort of transactions were going on. And to be honest, as JP said, there was nothing I could see in there that would make me think, oh, that doesn't look right. That seems a bit suspect. These all seem like normal transactions. As we said, yeah, the red one is Tornado Cash, but that doesn't mean that anything necessarily that because it's Tornado Cash doing anything suspect. That's not always the case. And the other thing to point out is those transactions into Tornado Cash, they are historic. I don't think I saw anything in there too recent, probably sort of earlier in the year. So yeah, that's just to show you the sort of background work that we go into when we're trying to vet some of the wallets and their previous activity.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me just pull up my screen again, and yeah, like you say, any questions, please bring them up. I have been sort of keeping an eye on what's going off in chat. Lord Shiogorath, I'm probably butchering that name, but we have done MDB analysis as well, so when we work with people, we dive deep. I'll leave you with this. MDB scored pretty highly, but we'll caveat that with saying even a project with 100% from our assessment could fail or rumble, right? That's the caveat. That's the disclaimer that we put in, right? So we've got that. It's ready to rock and roll. It's on our website for AOC members. You know, they get that for free. Otherwise, it comes with it. No, I don't think you can get it on the actual normal website at the minute. It's just private to the AOC members. Anyway, back to the assessment. So with Horde, what we're going to touch on right now is, let me just pull up, sorry about the kids screaming in the background. I've got some visitors, family members, here from another country. So you should be able to just pull up my screen again. You should be able to see that. Okay, right, so we know the tokenomics. I'm not going to spend too much time on the tokenomics. I think, you know, you could just go and do that yourself. I don't think you're going to get too much value from if we was to cover this off today. A couple of strategies in there. These are not endorsed by us. These are just strategies that people have used. Okay. A little bit about their ZNFTs. They cost 400 USD, but again, I don't really want to go into the tokenomics of some of this. I think one thing to say is, and we'll see some of this with the data a little bit later on when we look at some of the data, okay, is the Horde plots, for example, give you like a 300% return, and for all intents and purposes, it's done exactly as it says on the tin up until this point right now. The one thing I'd say is, okay, for this to be sustainable, and by sustainable I don't mean a straight line, I mean, you know, have the funds constantly regenerating in some way, so that the backing of a particular token, you know, is constantly increasing, let's say. You've got to have plenty of things within the ecosystem that's going to generate 300%, right? And the simple reason for that is, well, if you think about the S&P 500, you know, you're looking at about a 10% gain per year, and they're doing loads of things from, you know, all sorts of business stuff. Well, 10% is pretty high, and is seen as very high in the traditional world. 300% is pretty high still. It's not as high as some of your 100,000 or 400,000% APYs. I get that, but you just got to have in the back of your mind that to make that 300% sustainable forever and a day, you've got to make sure you keep getting the income going through different means. And they've tried to do that through some of these ZNFTs, which is a trading bot as a service. The question I would have in the back of my mind is whether the bots themselves, I mean, they'll contribute, right? They'll contribute towards the Horde token and keeping that afloat. Is it enough? Not sure. Is it enough with everything in the ecosystem as it is today? I'm not 100% sure. I don't think so, as it stands today, based on some of the data, which we'll go into just now. So with Horde, I'm just checking any questions. No, we're good so far. So, interestingly, there's this link that's been put out. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but I'm going to drop it into the chat so you can have a look for yourselves. This is really useful. So June Analytics is a website that you can go to. Oh, I can't post Apex. Never mind. Can't post a link. Anyway, you can see it up there, so you can type it in yourself. If
you DM me, I've got privileges to post. So if you DM me, I'll post it in the channel. All right. Well, actually, the other thing, there's a channel called AMA Questions. Randomly, you can post links in there. So that one would work if you just want to throw it in there. But it's not. You don't need to post it. Yeah, I've just sent it to you.
Let you deal with it. Cool. So June Analytics is basically, it's a website that people could just go along and connect to, you know, smart contracts or whatever it is, and create their own sort of dashboards, right? Now it's super interesting when you look through this. I really recommend you take your time and go through some of this and just understand what this means. That's a quick overview, right? We've got the Lock TVL at the top, $36 million. These guys have done a really good job in terms of creating, you know, money I was looking at their multi-sigs. They had a ton of money in the multi-sigs. They've just injected a load, so it's less so now. But it's a very popular project. Okay, very popular. I think there's a bit of a caveat that we should just look into a little. Let's look into this a little bit more. You should be able to see June analytics here, and I'm looking at in particular. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more.
JP, if you click on that itself, you can go to the query results as well. It's got a bit more detail on it, but
this one.
Yeah, and then on the left you've got query results, and you can actually see like the numbers.
Oh, got it, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right, so what can we see here? Well, what this graph gives you in particular, okay, is you've got inflow, outflow, daily, net, and balance. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, inflow is money coming into the protocol, outflow is money going out. Daily net is obviously the difference between the two, and then the balance is the balance of the LMS. Okay. Well, up until sort of this point right here, it was doing pretty well. You can see it a gradual incline look, right? And then all of a sudden it's dropped off a bit. Now, I've been looking at these numbers for probably a couple of weeks now, just monitoring it, seeing what's happening, and going, just generally doing some analytics on it. And I mean, look at this, some of these numbers. So if I just hold it there, you should be able to see minus $52,705. That's in a day. So they've emitted more than the money's coming in, and the net difference between the two is 57,000. Okay, this significant change in volume here came as a result of their latest announcement, which was around the cuts in emissions, so in rewards. The rewards don't change, but it's extended over a longer period of time, as my understanding. And you can see here there's much less volume. This bit over here is far bigger in volume than what it is right now. The other thing I'd say is look at some of these numbers. So keep your eye on that daily net, minus 20k, minus 38k, minus 39k, 41, 51, 42, 52, 67. Okay, this one's a big inflow because that's when they injected 500k into the protocol. Okay, and you can see that in their announcements, and you can see that in this big spike here. But following that, day before yesterday was minus 161k. Yesterday was 74k, and today to this moment in time is 8k. So there's some pretty significant emissions here, and you have to just wonder what's going to be happening to this liquidity manager balance over that period of time. If it continues in this sort of trend, then you may start seeing it dip below $1 million, which is this grey sort of line here. And I think when it sort of dips below that, there's this, what I've sensed around the community is we're all right as long as we're above the $1 million, which is fine. But I think once you start getting below this, I'm just wondering what's going to happen with the protocol at that point. Now, having said that, these guys have been pretty inventive when it's come to building and developing and things like that. So these guys could pull something out of the bag. But I think what we're seeing here is the state of what we have in terms of Ponzinomics coming in. So if you have less people coming in, it's going to dent your income, right? Let me just head back. Just head back to the original one. It shows it nicely here. I mean, look at this. Huge volume. It's on the increase, and then all of a sudden drop. Okay, this drop of volume is not going to be good because all of these plots that have been created beforehand, they're generating X amount of yield to each of those plot owners. Well, from the announcement, which is this big drop here, what it means is that all of a sudden you have much less income coming in. So we're going to see what happens with that LMS, I think. but this is based on data. Like I said, this team has been inventive in the past. They've created new parts to the ecosystem and generally done a good job so far. But for me, if I was going to be investing in this, I'd be cautious, I think. So that's that. So what else have we got?
First thing I think on that, JP, is obviously for them to even have to start thinking about reducing emissions. They've clearly extended the time in terms of the kind of the return on investment. Let's just say.
Yeah.
So whoever's done the internal deep dive on their own protocol has realised, okay, something's changing, that we're no longer sustainable if we keep on this path, and that's been more concerning in the fact that now the volume's dropped off significantly. So it's like, okay, well, what's plan B? And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. You said it yourself, but that would be an alarm bell in my head. Really would be an alarm bell.
Yeah. I think
it's common. It's a common pattern in DeFi, because we've seen this as other projects as well, haven't we? When Thor introduced their sliding tax, Power as well. Vapornose have recently just sort of changed to a new model, but to be fair, they've got looks like they're building a chain and a DEX, and they've got a whole framework that's been going on for ages. But yeah, I do certainly take the sort of cautious approach and view when I start seeing things like these sort of sliding tax being introduced into projects.
Yeah, it's kind of like, where's the new money going to come in? That's what I'd be thinking, because ultimately these Ponzi-nomic kind of projects, it's all about new money coming in all the time, and to help sustain, I don't want to say exit liquidity, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the utility they're trying to add as well with the DEX and the game, I'm also sort of like, how many DEXs do we need? Every project I've looked at is building a DEX, and we've not seen a game like sort of crack the code yet in Web3. So yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so just to continue, I think you're exactly right, Apex, right? At this point, like before this significant drop that you can see, right, they've gone to, right, we need to cut emissions, right? And that's with the volume increasing. They've cut the emissions, and I think this drop, I think that was not desired. I don't think they anticipated how much that would drop. So I think you're right in terms of thinking, okay, that was plan A, so what's plan B now? I don't know, though. These guys might have something up the sleeve. They've surprised us all before. Okay, so that's some of the analytics. I don't think there's anything there that I've said that is out of turn. If anyone in the crowd wants to say otherwise, I'm more than happy to have a debate, a quick discussion about this. I try to base anything that I see on the data or what I see on the blockchain or whatnot. So I'm more than happy to have a chat. Cool. Let's move on. So, where do we get to? So, what's Nillion?
That's what one. Yeah.
Right.
Scores now, I think, mate.
Right, we've got a load of scores. Okay. Now these scores are based on experience. So I've been doing this nearly a year. Some of them are ranged, some of them are either yes or no. Okay, so but I want to give you some information as to why we may have dropped some of these points on some of these, right? The end of the day, we've got a score of 44.24%. It's the lowest one that we've done to date in this new format, but having said that, we've only done a handful in this new format. What does that mean? Well, this score right here, even if that's 100%, like I said earlier, businesses can still fail in real life, right? This is the wild, wild west. You guys are all in this degen space with me and CaaS. We're deep down that rabbit hole. Even if it's the safest project in the world, something could happen, some black swan event or something. So you cannot take this score as a sign of safety. What you should do with this is say, right, where are the drop points, and look into it yourself. The other thing is, we assessed this, we finished this on the 29th of October. Things could have changed since then, and I'll explain why a little bit later on. So this is only as relevant as kind of like the day that you do it. So here in the UK, we've got this car test that's called the MOT. And the MOT is an inspection on the car to make sure it's safe to drive on the road and it's legal and whatnot. But the day after, I don't know, something could happen and your car's no longer safe, right? So it's kind of like that in this space. So you have to just take these scores and what we're saying with a pinch of salt, and I always recommend go to verify yourself. Okay, I really always recommend that. And in my community, it's the same thing. I'll tell them exactly the same thing. So if it's okay, I'd like to go through some of the scores here. Then I'll hand over to CaaS to finish the last part of these scores. So I'll probably do the first half. CaaS, if you pick up the second half. And then we'll jump into the Nillion project as well, which is super exciting. So, question number 1, proxy contract? Yes or no? Well, proxy contract is a contract which is kind of like, if you've heard of electrical boards inside like your TV or something, right? You have something like a mother-daughter board where it's one electrical board, a main one, and then you have a smaller one that sits on top of it. And it's kind of like the same in DeFi, where you have a smart contract and then you have another contract on top of it. Now, what a proxy contract does is it enables you as a developer to have full flexibility, which means you don't need to go and implement a version 2. Okay, we've seen many contracts delivering a version 2, and that often means that it's not a proxy contract. Now, from a developer standpoint, that's great because you've got all the flexibility in the world. It means you can change your taxes, you can change anything, any parameter on the contract you can change. You can even implement new things and take things away. So from a developer point of view, it's ideal, right? The caveat to that is, well, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of rug pulls because of proxy contracts. And that's because of those things, right? When you look at the contract one day, it seems fine, and then the next day it's got this honeypot part of the code in or something like that. So when I see a proxy contract, the reason why I'm asking this question is, how much control does the developer have over the contract? Okay, would he need to go and implement a V2, which is a lot of work and effort, and that would need to be communicated, or is it something that he can just change overnight and everyone wakes up to some significant changes? So we scored it a 1. All of the contracts that are in place are proxy contracts. Okay, so they have full flexibility to change pretty much any parameter. The caveat to that is, where was I going with that? Lost my train of thought. It's a proximity contract. I've lost where I was going with it. Anyway,
one side is flexibility, the other side of the coin being, if you're an investor, I guess more risk.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at this from a risk perspective, right? So that's why it's weighted towards a 1. If I was like, I don't know, some form of developer club or whatever, right? I'd give it a 5 because it's got loads of flexibility and it's great. So that's that. The verified contract is interesting. Let me give you an example. So if I go onto Deck Screener and I type in Horde, there's the beautiful straight line look. It has done a really good job at keeping that straight line out. I'll give it its dues. Over here on the right hand side, you have the BUSD contract, and you also have the Horde contract. Okay, so if I click this little icon here, what it's going to do is it's going to take me to that contract. And then if I click contract on this tab here, okay, we can see that this one's a proxy. Okay, but you can also see that it's not got a verified green circle here. Okay, so it says the proximity contract is this one. So this is the other part. That, do you remember I was saying about the mother-daughter arrangement on the electrical boards? Well, this is the second part of this smart contract, the bit that they can freely change. Now, when it's not verified, this is what you see. Okay, I mean, it's not human readable. We don't know what it's saying. Okay, we can decompile the bytecode, but it's not, you won't be able to read the code like you can read the code on another protocol, for example. What does that mean? Well, it just means that the contract is, let's say, closed source as opposed to open source. So a lot of things in crypto and on blockchain are open source, so anyone can read the code, can copy the code, can do whatever. Closed source makes sense for a project like this because they want to sell the rights to the license of the LMS, right? So in order to do that, well, you've got to keep the code from becoming public. And the way to do that is simply not verifying. Now, when I look at this from a risk perspective, you can see why that makes sense from a business perspective. Flip the coin, let's look at it from a risk perspective and us on the outside looking in. We don't know what's in that code. So normally when I do a deep dive on a project, I'm looking at the code, I'm looking at all the functions, and I can pretty much make out what's happening in the code. Here I can't verify anything, right? And so that's why it scored a little bit low there. So unfortunately that has scored them down on quite a few things because a lot of these questions we just can't verify right now. So has it got a minting function? Well, I don't know. You know, their tokens is 1,111,111. But is that fixed or is it mint? You know, can they mint more? They could mint more in theory. Does it have safe math, which is the prevention of overflow and underflow attacks on a contract? I don't know. I can't say that. The contracts may have that in place. Let me just say that. It could have all of this in place. But I can't verify that. And so when I'm passing an assessment out to my community, well, I'm going to err on the side of caution. Okay. By the way, CaaS, this one, we ought to probably change that one based on what I've just said. Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway, halt the trading function. So we've seen this function be used to like honeypot a particular project, right? We have seen honeypots, seen plenty of them, to be fair. An example of this, I don't know if any of you guys are in there, but there's Starlink Finance, which uses the LMS. They created their own, by the way, it's their own LMS. But in the function of their contract, they have the ability to stop all trading, all buys and sells, except for the owner of the contract. That's kind of like what we mean here. Have they got the ability to just stop trading? And again, it might be viable from a business perspective. I just struggle to understand why a protocol would need that, but that's just me. So again, we can't verify, unfortunately. We've just got a comment there. What we got? Virgil, I see. Proxy contracts are a big no. Too much info hidden with it. That's exactly it, to be honest. That's all it is from my perspective. Right. Tax. Do you want to talk about this, CaaS? Because I know you did a bit of work on the tax.
Yeah, I had to get a little bit creative with the tax because obviously I can't get into as we've just discussed, the proxy. I can't actually get in there, have a look at the code and say, yeah, that's 5%, yeah, that's 10%, yeah, this does that. So I had to meticulously scroll through Deck Screener, through the buyers and sells, find the prices at certain points, and then go on the blockchain and then verify that the correct amount of Horde, as it was being deducted and swapped around on PancakeSwap, was in line with the percentage that they said it was. And yeah, for the buy tax, I've managed to verify 0%. For the 20% and the 10%, I managed to verify it with 2 other transactions as well. So yeah, that they obviously scored high on that. And then with the sell tax, though, we have obviously it's a bit difficult because we've got 2 lots of brackets there. So I've had to grade that as a 2 because the 20% is very high, in my opinion, for sell tax. And as we know, as it's a proxy contract, they can change that whenever they want. They've already changed it once to introduce these sort of like staggered sliding, whatever you want to call it, taxes based on the price. So that can change whenever they like. But to be fair, they have they did give you some notice on when they are doing that. And then transfer tax as well. I was able to verify that with 1 transaction. I took probably about an hour to find it, but yeah, I've been certainly able to verify that through some sleuthing on the blockchain.
Cool. Thank you very much. So just quickly running through this now, just conscious of time, we want to get through Nillion as well. So we always look at, on the contract, it's okay to have a sell, transfer, and a buy tax, right? Because it's a good way for a protocol to make money in order to make the protocol a little bit healthier. I understand that. What I also look for in the contracts is, well, what's the maximum values that the tax could go to? And I have seen it on previous protocols before where they say, oh, the maximum is 30%. And I've been in the contract and I've said, there's no limit, which means it could go right up to 100%. Well, what does that mean? That means that the contract could essentially become a honeypot, which we've seen before. I don't think that would happen with these guys. I think they've got pretty good reputation with their community. But I'm just saying, when I'm looking at it from an external perspective, it's possible. All right, and we don't know. We can't verify what's in the contract, unfortunately. Any questions before we move on? Okay. Multi-sig wise, yeah, they've got multi-sig set up. I think they had 2 out of 4, which is the on Gnosis. So there's some links in here as well. I recommend, if you don't know how to go and check a multi-sig, I recommend you learn to. It's such a cool way of verifying things. You can also see all the transactions that happen. You can see if someone changes the limit, so going from a 2 of 4 down to a 1 of 4. We've seen that before, by the way. If you don't know how to do that, I really recommend it. You can go to the Gnosis website, add a existing contract, just take the contract address from the multisig, post it into there, and then you'll have all your information available.
Or if you're really stuck, just jump in the analysis on chain Discord, and I can jump on the chat and I'll show you how to work it.
See if I can quickly pull it up. This is really,
or JB can do it now.
Yeah, it's really useful. In fact, this is an MDB one. You can tell I've been sleuthing. Right, so yeah, if you go here, add safe, okay, add existing safe, check which network you're on, and then just post in the address, give it a name, click next. It gives you how many people and their wallet addresses are on the multisig, and then you can go out and check these ones as well, these wallets, see where they've been getting the funds from, or if they've been dabbling in some scams or whatever, right? Whatever you want to use for. And then once you click continue and add, it adds that to your portfolio. So you can see 1 or 2 that I've been looking at just here, right? And this is as part of the new format that we've been doing for our AOC assessment. Cool. So there's a bit of information there just in terms of the different pools and stuff. It's always useful to have this information. So, it's just there. There's no scores associated to any of this. Fallback function. This is a function that unfortunately it does enable. It's kind of like a default option. So if the smart contract's operating in sort of a way that there's no defined answer to a response. What I mean by that is if, for example, it's hard to describe, but it's kind of like a process flow diagram. So if you ask a question, okay, and the responses to that question is either yes or no, okay, the next part of that process flow is one of those two. But let's say they choose an option, I don't know, but that option's not there. It's not an I don't know option, it's either yes or no. Well, then it's going to fall back onto the final option. Well, what that means from a smart contract perspective is that they can usually call on another contract to do something. And I've seen it used in a nefarious way quite a few times, to be honest. So that's a specific question in this assessment because I've seen it from experience. Unfortunately, in this case, we can't tell. We don't know if it's there. We've just reviewed Rebellion project with our AOC members in our Discord. They have a fallback function in there. Now, when we questioned the team, they said, yeah, it's there. It doesn't do anything. Well, then I'm thinking, well, why is it there? But anyway, Horde, we just can't tell because nothing's verified. We can't read the code. It's even the same on their NFT contracts as well. Okay. They had a CertiK audit, which is great. That's what you want to see. It seems as though, CaaS, can you remember looking at this? I think you mentioned they've done a number of different sort of remedial actions.
Yeah, so there were the first audit, as you expect. There's amendments and improvements to be made. Horde made tons of improvements based on the suggestions, which is really good to see. But I think there was only one major thing that was flagged, which is the ability to basically change the contract whenever they like, because it's not announced. But Horde made it very clear that the way that LMS works, it would be it'd just be impossible to function if they had the ability. Sorry, if they renounced the contract, which I completely understand from a business perspective. But yeah, they took a number of remedial actions in there, definitely.
Apex has just asked a brilliant question.
Very good. Yep.
So, would Certic have access to the proxy contract? The answer is probably yes. I don't know. I haven't verified that. But this is what you should think about. Even if they did, which I'm sure Certic would have done, right? Even if they did have access to that proximity contract, that audit is only viable like an MOT here in the UK, right? You go in for the car test, make sure your car is roadworthy, it passes the test, but the next day, I don't know, your tyres might be below the limit. Something can change, essentially, is what I mean. So, with a proxy contract, even if it is audited, that contract can change. And so, although they have a Certic audit, does that mean that the contract today is the same as the contract was back then? The truth is, we don't know. Okay, we just don't know. Okay, so let's move on. Sorry, CaaS, was you going to say something?
I'm just going to say as well, because the audit was done back in mid-May, from what I could tell, I think, or May to sort of late June. And the other thing as well is, when I was looking around in the multi-sig, just to sort of reiterate your point about not being able to see things in there, I did see a function that was called to remove from blacklist, which is suggests that there might be the opposite to that, a blacklist function in there as well. But yeah, just things to keep in mind, really.
Yeah, I mentioned to you in our chat, CaaS, earlier, blacklist for me personally, I guess MDB's probably got one, right? There's sometimes people who try to manipulate things or cause problems on a contract. You'd probably want to blacklist them, which means they can't trade with a contract. Oh, there you go. MDB don't have one.
Cool.
Then, if they've got the ability to blacklist everyone, that becomes a honeypot, essentially, right? People have traded money into the protocol. All of a sudden, you're blacklisted, which means you can't sell anymore. So that's the way I'd look at it. If it's one or two individuals, I'm actually okay with it, I guess. Yeah, just as is, really.
Yeah.
So is it constantly relying on investment? We know that, right? It has Ponzi-nomic elements to it. There is parts of the ecosystem that is generating a revenue. We know that they charge 50k for a license, or they have done in the past. The followers is great. There's no fake followers. They've got a great social presence, so they're very active in Discord and things like that. Brilliant at handling all the questions and things like that. So the team themselves seem like a pretty okay team. Yeah. So I think that's about it. But with all that in mind, unfortunately, because of the lack of verification of the contract, and the closed source nature of it, it means that we can't look into it. And so, based on some of these questions that we've asked throughout our assessment, we feel as though that score is adequate and fair for the smart contracts that we've seen. None of their contracts are verified. All of them are closed. You can't see them. So I feel as though from a risk perspective, that's fair. But I think that's it in terms of the Horde assessment. So before we move on to Nillion, I'd welcome any questions that anyone has about Horde.
Just a quick one from me. And I'd love to hear from any of the other guys in maybe not now or whatever, but I've got to be honest, even to the layperson, this is such an amazing piece of work. You know, specifically, I guess for me personally, I'd like to see this on a new project, something that's, you know, ready to launch, and what that deep dive looks like. I know some of I guess some of the questions couldn't be answered at an earlier stage. However, I hope the guys are getting just as much value out of this as what I'm looking at this as. And obviously, I've had the benefit of seeing the previous ones, but we kind of done the test one a good few months back now. But this is an amazing piece of work. And I think in the space that we're currently in, it really helps define a decision for me. Is it worth taking the risk? And I absolutely agree. I mean, for me, the big concerns, and it may not be a concern, by the way, I say that because you just don't know. But I think the lack of knowledge is just the biggest concern, is whether there would be something wrong, being, everything being locked down. So really good job on that, mate. I've got to say, that's a fantastic overview.
Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, we spend a lot of hours on these, and you guys, you get priority. So two projects per month. We'll go into this sort of detail, and you can rest assured that we spent the time doing the due diligence. And like I said right at the start, anything that you see in here just is as it was when we saw it. Things could have changed. Things get updated all the time, and you as individuals should not take this as investment advice. You do not want financial advice from me. Ask my wife, okay? This decision is down to you. All I'm doing is highlighting some of the things that we have seen or have not seen, okay? That's all I'm doing. You have to assess that versus your risk tolerance, okay? So I hope that's helpful. If anyone has any thoughts, I'd love to see a couple of chat comments or something like that, or you can feel free to come off mute. And I'm just going to grab a drink of water because I've got a sore throat coming on now. Right, and whilst, in case there's any questions, let me just prep for Nillion as well. We'll go into Nillion.
Marvin's in the audience, isn't he? Should we get him up? Because he's put a lot of work on, just how Nillion works. I think he is.
Yeah, he just needs to unmute. I think he is.
Yeah.
Let's see his name. Yeah, Marvin's here.
Oh, there he is.
So,
Hi,
Marvin. So Marvin came along to the AOC Discord and said, "Hey, I love researching. Is there any opportunities?" And I said, "Well, let's give it a trial." So here he is. So Marvin helped us on Nillion. And I don't think Nillion is a hard project to go and do a lot of research on. The concept is novel. These guys have been at this for a number of years. It's still not released. I don't think there's any deadlines for release or launch or anything like that. But I think it has a lot of potential. So we was all equally, really interested in seeing the analysis for Nillion. So Marvin, how about you start us off by giving us a very quick summary, if you can, of the Nillion protocol. Otherwise, I can do that as well. So don't feel afraid to bat that back to me.
Sure. If I find the document, give me a second.
Don't worry, I can kick this off. So, right. So Nillion is a fantastic.
You blew your shot, Marvin.
It's all right. We'll let him get the document and everything ready. He can contribute.
I'm damn unprepared.
You ready to go? Okay, go for it. If you're prepared, go for it, and then we can all chip in as well.
Yeah. Nillion tries to be a privacy as a service project. Give me 1 second.
Do you want me to take over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do
No
it.
problem. So, yeah, Nillion is an interesting concept, and it begins with a bit of a story. So, in terms of scores, just so you guys know, we can't give this project a score right now. And the reason for that is They haven't launched anything yet. But there's some really novel use cases here. So let's talk about some of them. Now, Nillion in itself, I would probably argue that they've not actually designed something, or at least taken or built a brand new concept. They've borrowed some of the ideas from different places. Okay, so let's start off with this. What is blockchain? Right, blockchain is a decentralized open source system that enables people to transact value from one person to another without the need for a third party, i.e. a bank. And it does that through the miners or stakers or anything like that, right? So the miners or the validators, they validate those transactions that they're legitimate and everybody agrees, and so on and so forth. Now, I got hugely excited about blockchain because I just think that is a fantastic way to provide immutable real-time data on transactions that's happening. And my mind went wandering like, wow, imagine that if this is a thing for all businesses or the government. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine the government being on the blockchain? Everyone can see their transactions. Printing money and buying shit with it or whatever, right? It'd be hilarious. The truth of the matter is it's not going to happen, right? The government and businesses will want to keep their transactions private. And so I think this is the problem that Nillion's going to solve. Now, a couple of things before we get into it, and this should really excite you, I think. And this is, again, not financial advice. As excited as I am about this, don't take financial advice from me. Ask my wife. I said that earlier, I'll say it again. Now, Nillion claim that they've been able to create a way of encrypting data that is unhackable. Okay? What does that mean? Well, traditionally, encryption as we know it today, if you had enough computing power, and bearing in mind that we have some quantum computers just on the horizon, okay, they are a thing, they are coming. Quantum computers could easily hack the encryption that we have. I say easily, but it'll take time, whatever. You get my drift. The encryption that we have today is possible to hack at some point with enough computing power, right? Now, Nillion claim to have created this novel concept, which we'll go into, of a way that's going to encrypt the data, split it, meaning that whoever receives it cannot go backwards, it's mathematically impossible, and they've said them exact words, mathematically impossible to decrypt. Okay, and you have to imagine the use cases.
Terry called me, but it just rang at one time, and then that was it. So I don't know if it was by mistake. He didn't leave a message or anything.
You contributing? Shall we drop him on mute?
No, like I said, it was just a ring, and
let's listen in and ask him some questions.
He's pretty good at leaving messages if he wants to talk.
Yeah, I can drop him on mute, I think. There we go. I don't know if that's muted just for me or everyone.
I can hear you all right, mate.
Apex, you might be able to server mute for now anyway. Anyway, imagine what that can do. Thanks. Imagine what that can do. Well, first of all, you've got this fundamental disrupting technology, which is blockchain, which is open source, everything's visible. The problem with that is businesses and governments and the big boys in this world, they're not going to want to use it because it's not private. Okay, they don't want the competitors to know. Nestle don't want to know. Nestle don't want their competitors to know what they're buying or investing in or whatnot. And so you've got to have at some point this privacy layer. Now, Nillion's solution is able to be applied to any blockchain. In fact, any technology is my understanding, any software. And the concept is really quite remarkable. So it begins back in the 1980s, and excuse me, in the 1980s there was something created that's called SMPC. Something, I can't remember what the S stands for, multi-party computation. I'm going off the cuff here, guys, I've got no script or anything. So I'm just remembering what from the research. So SMPC. Now, that was a way of encrypting and splitting up the encrypted data and sending it out to multiple parties. Okay. Now, in order to decrypt that, so you can use the data at the other end, you have to, wherever you send that data, they all have to communicate with each other to be able to string it back together. The problem with that is that it takes time to compute it. And so SMPC never really took off from the 80s. And SMPC, you can look it up, it's out there on the internet. It provides a type of encryptionless encryption. Okay, but it was all about the time. It never took off because of the time element. And so what Nillion have done is they've taken that concept, okay, and they have removed the requirement secure multi-party computation. Thank you, CaaS, appreciate it. They've taken away the requirement for those parties who each receive a part of the encrypted data. They've removed the requirement for them to communicate with each other. So what does that mean in blockchain terms? Well, if you, for example, your private keys on your wallet, all right? If you're using Nillion technology, and I'm this is a theory right now, because nothing's there in nothing's created right now. But let's say we've got your private key in your MetaMask wallet. Well, if we encrypt that, we're going to wrap it in some form of text that just doesn't make sense to us humans. And the way MetaMask works now is that you need your private key. I might have this the wrong way around. You need your private key in order to decrypt it and prove the transactions and so on and so forth. Now, what Nillion would do is, and remember that way is hackable with enough computer power. What Nillion would do is they would take that private key, they would encrypt it. Okay, so it's not readable, and that's using OTM. Marvin, what's OTM? I'll let you put that in chat. I think it's one-time mask.
Yes.
One-time mask, got it. So that's a one-time only encryption that can be used. Okay. Well, then what happens is Nillion have created this I'm going to call it a software called NMC, where they use the one-time mask. They encrypt that private key of yours, but then they split that private key into multiple sections, multiple parts. Then what they do is they take your split private key and they send those out to multiple different, let's say, validators on the blockchain. Okay. Now, previously, where each of those validators would have to communicate with each other in order to decrypt, what Nillion have done is figured out a way to prevent the need for communication, okay? And this is 1 billion times faster than SMPC. So what does that mean overall? Well, now you've got a format for encrypting. CaaS, if you can, I don't know if you've got that image available that just describes this in a picture's 1,000 words, but I'll just give you some time to pull that up if you can find it.
Yeah, just have a look now, mate.
Yeah, thanks. What that means is that not only has your blockchain, and remember this is any blockchain, got the functionality to deliver immutable data transactions, you now have the ability to make the data on the blockchain private and unhackable. Well, now, at least in my opinion, that seems a whole lot more attractive from a government standpoint and from a business standpoint, right? Even more so than the technology that you have in place today. So even the most secure databases that we've got in the world today, with enough computing power, you could hack them. Well, if you all of a sudden provide those companies or governments with a solution that is encryptionless, i.e. you cannot go backwards and find out what that encryption is, that for sure has to have value for it. Imagine the the secrets that, I don't know, the president's got, or top secret data or whatever it is, financial data of the S&P 500 or all of that. It's all completely private, can never be hacked. There's the image. Look, let me just bring that up on. If you go into chat, I can't bring it up on my screen right now. In fact, actually, I might be able to. Let me just share my screen. Share my full screen. Okay. So, private key. Okay, it's shredded into particles. Bear in mind it's encrypted. Those particles are sent out. These are like kind of like your validators. And in the previous model, these green squares all had to communicate with each other, and that's what took the time. And we're talking about hours and days here. That's how long SMPC would have taken. But with their NMC concept, it means that these guys no longer need to communicate with each other. Okay, so long as you have a piece of that encryption, and obviously the rest of it's on the ledger, you can just proceed forward with your whether it's a transaction or whatever it is you're going to be doing. But the key point here is that these nodes do not need to communicate anymore, and that just completely secures encryption. You cannot go back. You cannot go back through the encryption back to where it was sourced and figure out what the encryption was that way. Once it's gone, that's why it's called one-time mask. Once it's gone, you cannot get it back. So encryptionless encryption. Now, it sounds fantastic. I'd love to. I mean, I'm a bit of a tech geek. I appreciate that. So this for you guys might not be as exciting as what it is for me. But I'm hoping at least that the short story there was able to sort of put across what some of the possibilities are for this particular protocol. CaaS, just before there's any questions coming in, do you want to go into a little bit on the team and whatnot?
Yeah, just a very sort of high level. So I start with Miguel, who is an absolute gigabrain. The guy has got pattern after pattern after pattern. I managed to find some of the links that date back all the way to like 2006, I think. But he's just on a completely another level. Some of the patterns are still sort of pending at the moment, but a lot of them are sort of active, and they've all been around sort of scalability and security and privacy around like the sort of transformation of data from one point to another. And that's the thing as well, which I found quite surprising, because when I listened to the AMA, I think it was in Soho in London, they were talking about how, I think it was Miguel, was it Mantosa? Where is it? Just scroll down a bit. Yeah, Andrew Masanto, and I can't remember the other chap as well. It might have been Alex. They were sort of all by chance at some sort of talk, and they met Miguel there. And obviously with Mantosa and one of the other guys' experience coming from Hedera Hashgraph, they're all talking about sort of Web3, and Miguel didn't really, he hadn't really thought about applying his ideas around this sort of like scaling SMPC into Web3 tech, and it was just sort of like a light bulb moment from there, really. And that's pretty much how sort of Nillion came to the fore. It's like this meeting of experience on a blockchain, an absolute gigabrain. It's just sort of birthed from there, really. But across the team as well, they've got like all their experiences complement each other really well. Conrad, again, we've got links to his LinkedIn. I had a little bit of look on Google as well, just to find out about his history and sort of projects he's worked on. And he's absolutely tech buff. He's been in it all his life. He was one of the first engineers at Uber, which I thought was quite interesting. So if you're wondering who the guy is that's responsible for you guys waiting 10 minutes for a cab, but yeah, he gave a talk to Oxford University, just going through, I think, how just Nillion and how he met Miguel as well. I thought that was quite interesting. He's a big mathematician as well. I'm pretty sure he went to sort of post-grad on that. And that also sort of stems into Nillion, because Nillion is a computational layer. I think that's how it's able to like seamlessly integrate into so many areas, not just the blockchain, but Web 2 as well. And I think that's where his experience comes into it. Obviously, Miguel been through, and again, those aren't even all his patents, by the way. He's got loads more. I couldn't find them all. But I think the link there shows roughly about there's about 8 or 9 of them. But from my understanding, he's got about 30 patents, which is just I've never heard those numbers before in my life. And then Alex as well. He was on the founding team of Metalink, and he's been in a lot of sort of early blockchain projects as well. And Andrew sort of alluded to earlier about previously working for Data Hashgraph, which is HBAR, which some of you might know about. It's one of the top 100 currencies. It's very, very good tech for sort of scaling up and privacy related as well. So he's coming to the team. He's got tons and tons of experience. So he's a massive addition to the team. And yes, Andrew, sorry, yeah, he was also, so it's Andrew, the other Andrew, and Miguel, part of the original conversation around sort of Nillion's birth. But yeah, honestly, just have a look at some of these links on there. You'll be completely blown away by what I've seen. And in terms of the company as well, I had a little look on, I just checked everywhere, Google Maps. This link here, which shows the registered business over in Switzerland, like, the address checks out. We found a website which was in Swiss, which you had to translate. You should be able to do that when you click on the link. There should be an option on the top right to translate to English, or whatever language is easiest for you to understand. And it will show you that it's a registered company, so they're 100% here for the long haul, which is good to see. And then in terms of funding, like this is the thing I think that also just shows how much their currently small team, I'm sure they'll expand over time, is really into the project. It's like there's about 40 people on the team, but half of them they're just working off of like the promise of getting Nillion tokens in the future. And obviously, the guys that sort of like the founding fathers of the project, they've obviously come from like a very successful background anyway. So I'm sure that's been used to help the early blocks of this project as well. And yeah, use cases. JP's covered that already. It's just pretty much everywhere. It's absolutely unbelievable, this technology. So yeah, it's just sort of high level on the team. But yeah, check out those links. You'll see a lot of, especially Miguel's work as well.
What do we think the inroads for a DeFi investor would be into this project, Kent? Is there any? Tokens. Is that not clear yet?
Tokens are on the way.
Yeah,
right.
There's not even a test now yet or anything like that. So yeah, it's pretty early doors.
I think the team and the background is a very encouraging sign. I like the fact that there's LinkedIn all over the place, and even a nice anecdotal kind of story about all them, meeting in as a bit of a serendipitous session on a talk, and it's like, oh, what do you do? Well, what do you do? Oh, we could compliment each other, and then yeah, Nillion was born. Really, really exciting thing. That, I mean, the concept is brilliant as well. So I'm keen to learn more about that. Have they give any indicative timeframes on when things may start to come out?
No. No, they're not open yet.
I think I heard something about a testnet and the end of the year, but I don't know if they meant this year or next year. I'll have to check that out. But I did. There is like a rough time frame for the testnet. I can find out, and I'll message you guys later about it.
The thing is,
it sounds like something that can easily raise 9 figures through multiple series funding. Seems sus to me that they they had to invest in a Discord and sell tokens to TGMs in the midst of. I don't know. It seems like that's. It feels like that's the new way now, though, doesn't it? You know, the TradFi world and businesses and whatever else. It feels like this is the new way of going, and maybe that's the mentality. Who knows? Good point raised, don't we?
Yeah, I think. I mean, these are legitimate people with legitimate backgrounds, right? And the concept is legitimate as well. The risks are that it doesn't come to fruition, or they hit a rock somewhere down the road, and for some reason or another they can't deliver on it, right? But no one's invested anything right now, so that's, well, I say no retail investors have invested anything. They are heavily backed by VCs and other organizations and things, so that's why I don't think there's going to be any whitelist or anything for these. It's just going to be tokens go on sale one day, right? So from a DeFi perspective, there's no rebases, there's no 10 million APY, there's nothing like that. But the concept alone, let's put it this way, I'm happy that I've learnt about this now before launch. I think I'm going to be watching out for this one. And again, don't take financial advice from me. But this one seems like it's going to be here for years to come, which is quite rare to find a project before it's launched that has a lot of promise. So I'm pretty excited about it, I have to admit.
I think you want to see it tested, though, wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah.
To the layperson, I mean, even you, JP, no disrespect, but how would you be able to verify if the technology of what they're saying is true? Is true? It's not like you can see the particles that split off, and if someone tries to hack it, the best that they can see is one particle. I'd like someone much cleverer than me
and me
actually verify and say this is validated. There is absolutely no way that this can be hacked into, and that would be a game changer for society in general. I mean, cybersecurity as a whole, governments, as you say, would be all over it. It's an interesting concept for sure.
It's got the potential to disrupt blockchain. It's got the potential to disrupt encryption. And think about what's encrypted. 80% of the internet traffic's encrypted as it stands today. Just think about that as a size. It's significant, to say the least. But that's it on Nillion, guys. We can't give you any more than that right now. We've done the assessment. We've obviously we can't answer a lot. We can't give scores because there's nothing yet to score. However, I hope you've been able to at least understand the concept. If not, I've shared the video on YouTube with Apex. He's dropped into chat. I really recommend you watch that. It goes through what I said in a much better way. So if it didn't make sense, hopefully that video will. So yeah, that brings us to the end of Nillion and Horde. What did you think? Has this been useful to people? Could be a good way, bad way, I don't know. We tried to say it as it is.
Just from my feedback, and I've been looking at the channel as well for some of the comments, and there's been a few who've said it's great that it's completely unbiased. I think it's not tarnished with any bias towards a decision one way or the other. I think it's important that it's delivered in that way always, without it being flavoured, so to speak. But ultimately, for me, I think it's been brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed both projects, both insights. Appreciate, obviously, Nillion wasn't. It's difficult to go into the deep dive on that one because, quite frankly, there is nothing to deep dive at this stage. But from our perspective as a team and part of the Millionaire Squad, if you like, it gives us an insight into thinking about other projects. And I think now, and this has been recorded, so we'll make sure this goes out to the wider Millionaire Club team. It'll give aspiration for looking at things. So my feeling is it'll probably guide towards more projects that are probably ready to launch and anticipating whether they want to invest or not. So that's, for me personally, I think it's been amazing. I don't know if anyone else wants to just chime in and maybe give any feedback.
you know what, I'd be super happy if it's just helped people understand when you're looking at projects what to look out for and what questions to ask. I don't think you should ever be called a fudder or anything like that for asking any of the questions that we ask. If you don't know why you're asking the question, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm on Twitter, I'm at analysisonchain, all one word. CaaS, what's your handle on Twitter?
It's crypto AA service.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the bottom of that. So
our details are at the bottom. So if you want to reach out to us, ask questions of why.
Das ist alles vererbbar.
Ja, aber gerade psychische.
Alles, auch
Got
zum
another
Beispiel,
domestic going
wie
off.
du.
So yeah, hope it was useful, guys. I'd be interested to know if you guys or what projects you're thinking about next in terms of assessment. I would use this to your advantage, right? Think about which projects are about to launch. That's probably where you'd probably make most money. Again, don't take financial advice from me, but at least you'll be able to see some of the questions and responses of what we're asking, right? So think selfishly, think how can you get the most value out of this, and then feel free to reach out to myself or CaaS or Marvin, and we can, try to help you understand where a particular protocol sits.
Fantastic, and I'll be putting out a form, so we're kind of just at the start of November, so we've got 3 weeks for everyone to kind of go in and put anything they want in terms of recommending a project. We'll give the guys at least a week prior to their assessment so that they can review and do their magic on their side. And it'll be the last, did we say the last Sunday of every month? I think we've agreed the last Sunday, but if it changes, obviously you'll get plenty of notice. These things are fluid, as they say. But the anticipation is near the end of the month last week, and prior to that, we'll do the capturing of the points. But gents, listen, just from our perspective, fantastic job, really, really appreciated, and I'll look forward to sharing the video with you guys, obviously, and also the wider team. So thanks very much, and yourself, CaaS and Marvin, for chipping in as well, and JP, kindly appreciated.
Real. Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
mate.
Bye-bye.